Good morning, Professor Daviad. My name is Charles Ott. This is Team 3, and this is our project for the business analysis of intuitive surgical. So, what is intuitive? Well, first and foremost, they build robots that help surgeons perform more precise, less invasive procedures. Their mission statement is to improve patient outcomes by advancing minimally invasive care through innovative robotic technology. Intuitive Surgical is a US based medical technology company that was founded in 1995, specializing in robotic assisted surgical systems. They pioneer in minimally invasive surgeries using robotic systems. They're best known for the Da Vinci system, and they serve a multitude of hospitals and surgeons worldwide, operating in over 60 countries. I have actually worked firsthand with these robots and have noticed some issues with the design, but to say the very least, they are very impressive machines. I apologize for my screaming children. They just woke up. So, what does the industry look like? Well, the industry itself is surgical robots used for medical applications. It's a rapidly developing segment of healthcare technology. It's driven by demand for minimally invasive surgery, and there is a global adoption expanding, especially outside of the United States. I would say in China primarily. The firm itself is Intuitive Surgical. It is a US based medical robotics company, again, founded in 1995, and they have approximately 17,000 employees globally, ranging from engineers all the way to field service engineers and whatnot, as well as sales reps. They do perform an annual amount of 2.68 million surgeries. That's not only in the US, but outside of the country as well. And their flagship product is the Da Vinci surgical system, which has actually been upgraded to the, I believe, fifth generation. The market position, it's approximately 60 to 70% of the global market share, and they have over 11,000 installed systems worldwide. If you want to look at the actual market itself and how many surgeries are being performed, which does contribute pretty greatly to that market, there are approximately 313 million surgeries worldwide, right? Out of those, 15 million of them are laparoscopic surgeries, meaning that they can be done most of the time by the robotic system. Pretty large or pretty small percentage of the overall surgeries worldwide, but just that one number could greatly impact their market share and market presence within the industry. So. And their key competitors are Medtronic, Johnson and Johnson, and Stryker. Mostly Johnson and Johnson because they do have a $570 billion market cap for the Altiva system, which means that they could pretty much hire a team of attorneys, wouldn't have to bat an eye about cost for R&D and be able to compete with them pretty easily. So those are the key competitors, and we could see that pretty soon this market itself is going to be pretty split by who it's going to be more like an oligopoly, less more like a monopoly, but we're getting there. So their business model, all right, sell and lease surgical robots, which is about $1 million to $2 million per system. Recurring revenue from the following instruments and accessories. Most of the robots are single or multiple use. So after, I believe, 10 uses, they are no good. There are some that are single use, so they do make money off of those. Service contracts. So if the system goes down, they come and repair it. And then procedure-based usage, right? So there are specific arms for specific procedures, for instance, they have uh, organ donors, right, organ transplants that they have to use specific tools and instruments for. For the value proposition, it's an increased precision and control in surgery. That is what they're selling to their customers, right? And their surgeons. That's what they're trying to train their surgeons to do before they go out into the field, right? Um, Obviously, it's minimally invasive, better than cutting somebody open. So there are faster recovery times for the patient as well. And then the strong training ecosystem, it's locked in hospitals, right? Like I said before, the entire idea is that this company would like to transition surgeons who primarily do laparoscopic surgeries with their own hands to a robotic system, which is less invasive and theoretically easier to use once you master it. the strategic advantage is that there are high switching costs for hospitals, right? If you spend millions of dollars on this robot, they're going to want to use it. It makes no sense productively to not use it and go to other systems. But overall, medical instrumentation is pretty expensive as a whole, as I've learned working at Stryker. Um, there are large, there's a large installed base, recurring revenue stream, right? So, like I said, they have multi single use instruments that cost thousands of dollars, and sometimes they're only good for one use. That's a no-brainer, right? Making a ton of money off of that. And they are the industry standard platform for surgeons using robotic systems. So, as of right now, there are other competitors on the rise, but this is the staple for what they use. It's just you'll see later on why it may not be as sustainable as it might sound. So the Porter Five Forces, new entrants, threat level is moderate, it's increasing. There's high R&D and regulatory barriers, specifically with the FDA. But large firms are entering the market, like I said earlier, Medtronic and J&J. Power as buyers, threat level is high. Hospitals are large and price-sensitive buyers. They usually have a threshold they're able to spend every year, right? That's depending on their budget. Capital-intensive purchases, which increase their negotiation power for these systems. Um, Not to mention that a lot of the systems are actually reprocessed by either the hospital staff or by a third party such as Stryker, which is why I was able to get a hold of them. So there's another revenue stream for a different company because of that specific issue. Power of suppliers, threat level is moderate, specialized components and tech required, subtitles or substitutes, excuse me. Uh, that is also moderate. There are traditional open surgeries you could do that are a lot cheaper and everybody's trained on doing. And then there are laparoscopic procedures that they have instrumentation from other suppliers and competitors. And rivalry, well, the threat level is moderate. It is increasing, as mentioned again before. It is historically low, but it is not firm, and now it's rising due to new entrants because J&J is able to throw $500 million at $500 billion, excuse me, at R&D for their newer systems. So the three C's: customer, company, and competition. Right. Obviously, the target segment are surgeons, which are the end users, the hospitals and surgical centers, and patients. Right? They want people to feel confident in their systems, and they want to get people trained before they even enter their, uh, their main jobs. Right, the company, they do have a revenue of about $10 billion plus as of 2025, which sounds good, but remember there's a lot of room for improvement for the design as well as competitors, and the net income is $2.9 billion. 17,000 employees, and their next is medical equipment manufacturing. They do have a global presence as well, mostly in the United States, Europe, and they're expanding towards Asia. Competition. So Intuitive is a premium full system platform. Competitors have lower costs and specialized solutions, and market share is approximately 60% versus the fragmented competitors, right? So they are kind of dominating the market as of right now. But how do you maintain that, right? Like, how do you get to the point where even your competitors who have billions of dollars thrown at R&D and manufacturing, how do you stay on top, right? So, like I said earlier, it's a near monopoly to oligopolistic market due to increasing competition. The high barriers to entry include FDA regulation, which is super hard to get approved, and high R&D costs. So since they paved a way for through the FDA already, it's going to be a lot easier for other companies to get pre-market approval or a 510K because this company has done it, right. So that has probably put a lot of strain on their finances getting through, especially with the newer systems. But that's an existing issue. And then high R&D costs. I don't know if I said that already. Surgeon training and install base lock in, right? And they are the market leader due to the first mover advantage. Like I said, they paved the way for all the other companies. Strategic positioning due to the business model, and their CAGR is estimated at 14.7% for the market itself. So the current market for global surgical robotics is 13.69 billion. Their overall market share as of right now is 73.5%. But over the next few years, we're going to see that decrease because of the competitors. Whether or not it decreases significantly is going to be dependent on how well the company is able to compete with companies like Johnson and Johnson, right, or even smaller companies that that have more fine-tuned systems. The trend analysis. While Intuitive Surgical has scaled rapidly alongside a 14.7% CAGR industry, their increasing competition signals potential future erosion of market share, right? So if we want to look over here on Intuitive Surgical growth versus the industry growth, you can see they are growing linearly alongside the market. However, they're not dominating or they're not taking control of the full market. Right? There's still other companies that are doing that, but they do have a pretty large section. But high growth does not eliminate risk, right? The industry is shifting from growth driven because they paved the way for that specific sector, and it's moving towards a more competition driven. Right? So future performance depends on innovation, the cost control of the overall device. Remember, they're selling it for about $2 million, and they have subscription services as well, and adoption of new platforms. So we might see a change in the next few years before 2030. As I said before, 14.7% is a CAGR. The projected market value of this industry is expected to reach $27.14 billion by 2030, which is nearly set to double. And 85 to 90% of surgeries are still non-robotic, meaning that there is a pretty big section uh, of surgeries that they could make or profitize off of if they were to target those and develop some new ideas, right, which would help them significantly.
Hi, I'm Kylie, and I'm going to be explaining the case problems for Intuitive Surgical. First off, we have the training requirements. These are very extensive and need to be completed by anyone that's going to be using the equipment, which these trainings may not be feasible or cost efficient. And adopting these methods may also require that operating procedures be restructured, which may also not be suitable. There are high purchase, maintenance, and ongoing expenses for adopting robotic surgical technology, and due to the technology, robotic procedures may cost more than traditional procedures. There's also the clinical value that comes into question. The results of clinical studies are mixed as to whether robotic or traditional surgical methods provide better outcomes. This creates an unclear value proposition for the cost associated with these methods. And then we have our major issues. First of all, we have market saturation. There's high penetration in large hospitals, but not as available to small and community hospitals due to the cost. And then technological advancements are allowing for more procedures to be done by each robot, which means existing customers continue to pay more rather than new customers. Then we have market evolution. The new market entrants create competition. There's slower growth rates as we're moving out of the adoption stage. And then there's emerging markets that may struggle to adopt the robotic surgical technology. Customer needs, they need easier adoption and training methods rather than the extensive ones already in place. They need flexibility across procedures, that these methods can be used for multi-purpose platforms. And they need efficiency and not any added complexity. And then we have emerging competitors. Competition is intensifying. And then competitive dynamics could pressure growth rates over time. The current trading price is still below its 5 year median, and Medtronic and Stryker are currently Intuitive Surgical's closest competitors. We have the current state of the market. As you can see from the picture on the left, Intuitive Surgical has had a relatively positive trajectory over the past 5 years. Despite pullback to the broader medical instruments industry, Intuitive Surgical has continued to deliver strong operational performance and create divergence between fundamentals and stock movement. Then we just have some relevant data. Your PE ratio is 60.1, the profit margin ratio is 28%, and then there was a 52-week high trading price of $603.88 and a 52-week low of $427.84. So the ideal state would be to close the gaps of the cost of adopting robotic surgical methods, the technological limitations, and then extensive training requirements. And then ideal industry trends would just be fast growing and expanding market where robotics become the standard of care, continued and predictable market growth, procedural expansion, minimally invasive options, and then just continued revenue growth. Then you just have the prominent competitors. We have Stryker and Medtronic. Compared to Intuitive Surgical's 7.6% gain, Stryker had a decline of 9.6%. Intuitive Surgical does have higher startup costs than Stryker. Stryker's more niche. Stryker's revenue is more diversified, and Intuitive Surgical has a more recurring concentration and predictability. And then Stryker has a more limited competitive positioning compared to Intuitive Surgical. And then Medtronic is a diversified business with some growth opportunities. Intuitive Surgical already has RAS clearance for their devices, while Medtronic is still working towards this. While Medtronic is larger, Intuitive Surgical's growth margins and earnings appear to be stronger, and Medtronic is getting rid of its only consumer facing business in the diabetes unit. Which leads us to our objectives is would be to expand procedural volume, to just increase the number of total procedures per system and continue to expand into new surgical categories. Global expansion, continue to expand globally as it's still kind of low and growing. And then reduce costs. High costs are going to be the biggest barrier to entry. And if Intuitive Surgical could do anything to reduce these costs for their new customers, I think this would prove to be very beneficial for them.
I'm Camilla. I'll discuss Intuitive Surgical SWOT. Strengths are strong profitability, exceptional liquidity, low financial leverage that supports long term growth. Weaknesses are high product costs that limit access, declining liquidity, working capital is down from 6.2 billion to 5.3 billion. But despite these weaknesses, continued innovation paired with a recurring revenue model provide a competitive advantage and solid financial foundation. Opportunities are rapid growth in robotic assisted surgery, rising demand for minimally invasive surgeries, technological advancements like telesurgery, and joint ventures in emerging markets for global expansion. Threats are increasing competition from new robotic surgery entrants, which could impact market share, economic pressure on hospital budgets, ongoing regulatory and legal risks, and risk of technological disruption through competitors. Recognizing these factors allows for strategic growth while managing risks to maintain industry leadership. From a Crest perspective, the company holds a dominant market position with strong brand recognition and high switching costs, largely due to surgeon training and installed systems. However, competition is increasing, which could pressure both pricing and innovation. From a regulatory standpoint, the industry is highly controlled by agencies like the FDA, and while current legal risks aren't material, delays in approvals could slow expansion. Economically, the company performs strongly but remains sensitive to hospital spending cycles and broader macro conditions. Looking ahead, growth is driven by continuous innovation, with key trends including AI assisted procedures, remote surgery, and rising demand for minimally invasive care. Core competencies and competitive advantages. Technological leadership. The Da Vinci platform enhances surgical precision and outcomes through ongoing innovations. Installed base advantage. Over 11,000 systems installed create high switching costs and customer loyalty. Reoccurring revenue model. Regular instrument replacements create a stable revenue stream. Financial strength, high liquidity, and low debt allow for flexible investments. And brand reputation. Systems are globally trusted, reflecting their commitment to quality in healthcare. These competencies drive a competitive edge and market success. Some key issues include balancing high demand with costly systems that may hinder adoption, long term risks to market leadership from rising competition, significant investments are needed for maintaining their position, which may strain their short term cash flow, and it's capitally intensive. And this presents a growth versus cost challenge. Effective management of these issues is essential for sustainable success. Intuitive Surgical demonstrates strong profitability and low debt, providing a solid growth foundation. Its strengths include advanced technology and a recurring revenue model. Challenges such as high product costs, increasing competition, and reliance on hospital capital spending may hinder growth. However, the company can sustain their success through growth and technological innovation.
Here we have our implementation strategy that we suggest the company use to kind of combat the issues they be having now and kind of how the company can go further. At one, we have the implementation plan. So, of course, expand hospital partnerships in the United States and internationally. I think that's very crucial. Surgery is not done just in the United States, it's also done globally. I feel like the company could really hone in on the different types of surgeries that maybe offer there, maybe create different types of products that kind of tailor towards their surgical needs in other countries as well as the United States to kind of help them grow. Strengthen reoccurring revenue, of course, whether it's with their instruments or accessories, service contracts that they have at hospitals. And it's kind of a major one. Focus on only the high growth procedures, such as general surgery. So, of course, we kind of see an increase in general surgeries. I mean, general surgery can encompass many things. And I think just honing in on your products to kind of fit the needs of surgeons when they are doing a general surgery, not just every type of surgery. Of course, all surgery is important, but we want to make sure we're really targeting those surgeries that maybe the hospitals are seeing an uptake in. At two, we have our synergy of alternatives, kind of how all the alternatives for this plan can kind of mesh together. So more systems installed, of course, more procedures performed using the company's instruments. More procedures will, of course, lead to higher revenue. The more procedures surgeons are doing with the company's products, of course, more revenue for the company. Innovation is a major one. It will maintain competitive advantage and drive adoption. Of course, with times changing, surgeons might have different needs. Us humans, we might have different needs in surgery, so it's important for the company to kind of continue to innovate just based off of what is in need. And lastly, is create a self-reinforcing growth cycle that is both scalable and sustainable. Next, we will have who's a part of this implementation plan, who, what, when, why, how. Of course, we need executive leadership. Of course, I think with any decision when it comes, I think this kind of plan is kind of something that is fundamental for the company. I think, kind of changing the strategy just a little bit that I have now. Of course, leadership would need to be on board. Um, Major one is kind of implementing this, of course, domestically and international. I think while yes, like previously stated, I think yes, tailoring to in the United States would be amazing, but I also think internationally because you might have higher revenue sales or certain products in a different country than you would in the United States, just depending on what your product can kind of do for a surgeon. So I think that's super important. Um, and then lastly, how to overcome the limitations. One limitation, or the three limitations stated here: high cost systems. I think sometimes the product might be too expensive for the hospital, so kind of offer different leasing financing options for the hospital. Expand refurbished equipment programs, kind of see if things could be reused, increasing competition. I think straighten the training and brand loyalty among surgeons. And I think lastly, the last limitation is dependence on hospital budgets. We don't really want to rely on hospital budgets too much. So just two ways to overcome that would be increasing recurring revenue streams and focusing only on the essential high demand procedures.
Next, we will move on to the case issue and application of theory portion, presented by Katie. We start with the infamous 4Ps and people, which, as someone with a BBA in marketing, I think this is one of the most vital, along with promotion, but we'll get to that later. The first P we will discuss is product and the product strategy. Intuitive Surgical has a razor and blade system where you purchase a large core product, the Da Vinci surgical system, the actual robot that assists with surgery, and the blade in this instance would be surgical parts that need replacing, and they use a lot of service contracts to perform this. And they have created a good differentiation strategy as well by successfully obtaining a good reputation as one of the top of the line surgical equipment companies, while also having high switching costs, which incentivizes their clients to stick around. All right, the next P is price, and this is where things become limiting for Intuitive Surgical. They have very high upfront costs, and then it calms down a bit for whenever you just start replacing parts. But this limits who can purchase their equipment. It mostly is composed of large hospitals and healthcare system. But that, as the saying goes, you get what you pay for. So the raving reviews and testimonials due to their high quality equipment and use success has proven that. And the lifetime customer value is high because each purchase means there will be continued business with the clients. Alrighty, and the next P is place. And let me tell you, Intuitive Surgical is all over the place. They have a global presence, and over 11,000 Da Vinci systems are used around the world in many, many different countries. Their product becomes embedded into the hospital system and a vital part of their operation, which means it's hard for them to stop using it, which is good for Intuitive Surgical. All right, and the next one is promotion. And this one is exciting. Well, it's interesting because Intuitive Surgical doesn't use your typical advertising with like TV, newspaper ads. They rely on credibility through user success, which typically comes from reliable surgeons and hospitals through testimonials. And they also offer promotional training programs for the surgeons to use the equipment properly to feel better about purchasing it. Because whenever the surgeon wants to use it, then the hospitals will buy it. But if they don't know how to use it, they don't feel comfortable using it, then they don't want to get it. So these promotional training things are very important. And again, I want to stress how important word of mouth is for a company. Since this is considered publicity, it's a form of free advertising that is more credible than your basic TV or magazine ad. And they use it as their main source of advertising and have prospered from it. But not a lot of companies can do that. This is just a fun example. All right, and finally, people. Intuitive Surgical relies on surgeons just as much as hospitals. Even though the hospitals are the buyers, they need the surgeons to feel confident using the equipment properly, as I mentioned earlier. And this is why the training is so vital. Whenever they feel comfortable using the product, they give positive feedback, and that fosters brand loyalty. This also branches to their own employees who take care of the equipment. Training and product knowledge allows the technical teams to perform replacements and fixes with certainty and professionalism. All right, done with the P's. Now it's time to move on to product portfolio and position strategy. All right, so they use the Da Vinci surgical system as their main product, which involves surgical robots that can perform or assist to various surgeries. And they also have the Ion system, which primarily is used for lung procedures. Again, they have a platform ecosystem and a razor and blade system in place where you purchase the big thing and then you replace parts, or in this case, it's typically arms that are part of the surgical robot. And also razor and blade, the example comes from whenever you purchase a razor and then you have the blades come in every month. But I figured you already figured that out. All right, so next we will move on to key restraints and issues that they're currently facing right now. So financially, they're doing well, but if they wish to expand their market and reach smaller hospitals, they need to offer products and services that can accommodate what they can handle. Other than that, they're financially stable. Their debt to equity ratio is 0.13, which means the company's assets are invested in stockholders and not creditors. So they have less interest to pay. And this is a sign that a company is stable, typically. And as far as the market goes, there are big name competitors like Stryker or Medtronic that they have to keep an eye on. And they also try to strategically be better than. And then Stryker is doing a little better right now, as Kylie mentioned earlier, but not by much. So it's the race, it always changes who's ahead. Okay, operationally, they need to be aware of their training of the tech teams and keeping their training up to date. This makes sure the machines are not damaged as they adopt new innovations. And it keeps the usefulness of the equipment longer so the companies can keep replacing parts. All right, so timing constraints. This can be an issue because there are slower seasons where hospitals aren't purchasing their robots or the market already has the technology they offer and they need to make an innovation or a better product. And finally, for my portion, I know I keep going on, but here's the criteria for success. To continue to see success, they need to focus on expanding their client pool, offer more products and services so smaller hospitals can be part of their target market and contribute to their profit. They can make their equipment suitable for more surgeries, and this can be done through innovative processes by adding attributes to the machines to assist in more ways than currently offered, or just making new products altogether. They can continue to streamline and improve their training process for surgeons and employees. Adopting new ideas and being innovative keeps them on top of their competition, and their customers will be drawn to them. And then they're doing well financially, but they should always be aware of their finances, especially in an economy that's always changing and affected by many companies, no matter what you're in. And that's all for my portion.
So here are the three main options for the company. First, they can focus on selling more robots by getting more hospitals to adopt the Da Vinci system. That helps grow their customer base. Second, they can increase recurring revenue by making money from each surgery through tools, service, and software. This focuses more on long-term income. And third, they can invest in innovation by improving the technology and creating new products to stay competitive. Each alternative has its own pros and cons. Selling more robots brings in big upfront money and helps expand into more hospitals, which also creates future income opportunities. But at the same time, these systems are really expensive, so they're harder to sell, take longer, and depend a lot on hospital budgets. Recurring revenue is more stable. It brings in steady income over time, has high profit margins, and the company makes money every single time the robot is used in surgery. This is also less risky because it doesn't rely on constantly finding new buyers. The downside is that it depends on robots already being installed, growth can be slower, and hospitals might push back on pricing. Innovation is important because it helps keep the company ahead of competitors, improves the product, and allows them to expand into new types of procedures. But it's expensive, takes time to develop, and there's always a risk that it won't succeed right away. When you look at the numbers, each robot sale brings in about $1 million upfront, which is a big one-time payment. But the real value comes after that. Each surgery brings in about $1,000 to $2,000. And if a robot is used around 300 times a year, that's roughly $300,000 to $500,000 per year from just usage. On top of that, service contracts can add another $100,000 or more each year. So over time, one robot can generate a lot more money than just the original sale price. That's why the main takeaway here is that the long-term money from surgeries and service is actually more valuable than the one-time robot sale.
Hi, I'm Daniel Jaritu, and I'll be doing the recommendation/conclusion part of the presentation. So for our recommendation, we are choosing to go with alternative number 2, which is increasing recurring revenue. By choosing this strategy, we are most likely to see an ability for the company to generate steady, predictable income from each surgery, focusing on maximizing value from the Da Vinci systems that are already installed, and that the company is choosing an approach where instead of selling or just only producing revenue from selling robots, we're trying to create a income that is more steady and is able to be used multiple times. So we're generating income from the sale of the robots, but also from the use of the robots every time, which should lead to a better business model in the long run. And as far as how we think about this, we think about this by comparing it to the other alternatives. So with alternative number 1, we have to face the biggest problem, which is hospital budgets. They have to budget for a lot of things. So spending, making big purchases on these robots is high risk for them. And alternative number 3, um, is very time consuming and costly and has a lot of higher risk compared to alternative number 2. Alternative number 2 is kind of the middle point for all of our options that we have for creating a better revenue system for the company. It creates a better balance of profitability, stability, the least amount of, or the a medium amount of risk, and has a common ground amongst all of them. And for the trade-offs and the financial comparison, like I mentioned before, alternative 1 is very expensive for whoever chooses to purchase the products that the company has. But along with that, the revenue that we get, it's not a reoccurring income. It's a upfront purchase of $1 million. We also don't know what the long-term impacts of this revenue can be, since we're only seeing the upfront benefits of it. With alternative number 3, we're kind of banking on the idea that there will be long-term profit, but there's a lot of high risk, high reward situation, which is very risky for us as we're trying to make sure the company's in the best position possible. And with alternative number 2, we'll have a better annual income from them in terms of the sales of robots or purchases from robots from hospitals, the contracts that can be created for the services of the robots, and the lifetime value of this alternative is better than the high points of alternative number 1 and the high risk of alternative number 3. Overall, the company should be focusing on sacrificing their short-term gains that alternative 1 offers for the greater long-term profitability, stability, and scalability that alternative 2 has, and that alternative 3 does not guarantee. Thank you.
That concludes our presentation. Here are our references. And we appreciate your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us via email. We are Group 13. Thank you.